Hello, everybody. This is Louis Muñoz from the Morristown and Morris Township Library in New Jersey. I am joined today by, you can see them in the background, Motor and Everest. And the three of us have been working very hard on this and other videos in the foreign film series online. These are recommendations mostly on foreign films that I will be sharing with you over the next weeks and months. So I'm going to be speaking today and in the next couple of videos about two of my favorite directors. Both of them happen to be from Japan, so you gotta say, aha. One of them is Akira Kurosawa. I love him, admire Kurosawa very much. He was the director of Ran and Rashomon and Seven Samurai, film classics that will be very well known to many of you. But I have a special place in my heart for Yasujiro Ozu. He was born in 1903 and died in 1963 on his 60th birthday, so bummer. He was active from 1927, so basically from the silent film era all the way through his death. He made about 54 films. And again, he's not as well known to many of us here in the West, although he is considered one of the greatest film directors in history. So for example, he is often cited as one of the greatest and most influential film directors of all time. And today's film, Tokyo Story, Here Comes Everest, I believe, is from 1953 and has often been cited as one of the greatest films of all time. And in fact, in 2012, Sight and Sound magazine did cite his film as the best film of all time, Tokyo Story this is. So I hope that you will get intrigued by both this film and by this director. So Tokyo Story from 1953 is the story of the Hiroyama family. We start off with the parents, elderly parents who live in Western Japan, this little harbor town in Western Japan, and they are starting out on a journey to visit two of their children who live in Tokyo, actually one of the suburbs of Tokyo. And right away, once they get to Tokyo, you wonder, why did the children invite them to Tokyo? Because they're very busy and make almost no time for these parents. So who does make time for the parents is this other character. Her name is Noriko. And we don't know who Noriko is for quite a while in the film. We can kind of guess who she is. And this is indicative of one of Ozu's unique storytelling techniques. And that has to do with what are called ellipses. And if you know from grammar, ellipses are the ... that you have in a sentence that's basically tell the reader you're skipping over a bunch of information, a bunch of words, etc. So ellipsis in filmmaking is something that was very unique to Ozu that has been adopted by other directors and storytellers as well. And it was used before then, of course, as well. And basically, if you're watching a film, Ozu was known for a lot of family dramas, and so many family dramas, what happens? You're getting ready for something like a wedding, for example. And so Ozu will have people getting ready for a wedding, and then there's Everest again. All of a sudden, it's 2 months after the wedding. So most filmmaking, you would have the wedding represent the culmination of all these conversations, the preparations, and pay off a lot of dividends in the drama. But say hello, Everest. But that was not Ozu's style. And so he did this because he was trying to avoid melodrama. So family dramas do tend to involve a lot of melodrama, but not in Ozu's case. I will say that there are many heartfelt moments in Ozu's dramas. It's just less obvious in this way. Another technique in Ozu's filmmaking is that he will have characters talking very directly into the camera. And this is not typical storytelling. And he did this because he wanted audiences to feel like the characters were talking directly to you, that you were, in other words, very involved in what was going on in that scene. And then going back to Noriko, this person that you end up finding is the daughter-in-law of a son that actually died in World War II. Well, actually, we don't even the family doesn't know exactly what happened to his son, but he's presumed dead. And we have to remember that this film was made in 1953, which was only 8 years after the end of World War II. And of course, there was a lot of bombing and loss of life and of property in Japan. Great devastation. And Ozu is interesting because he won't make obvious references to these events in his films. Instead, he'll make very oblique and kind of throwaway references sometimes to some of these life events and major historical events. So going back to our film, Noriko is our person that we find out, like I said, is our, sorry, got distracted there, is somebody that is technically a tangent of the family. She's living this whole other part of Tokyo and has to come from quite a long way away to get to see the grandparents, her former in-laws. And so going back to the grown children, and they're not spending much time or attention on the parents, well, this is one of what I find Ozu's interesting points, which is that we have kind of these two sides. We have the parents on the one hand who are getting older and getting lonely and seeing life pass them by, and then we have the children who are, they have their own lives, their own families, and don't have time for the parents. And so Ozu's not making the point that these grown children are so selfish, although they are, and that is kind of what we're getting from the film. But the point is also that these are natural transitions in life, that this is what happens in families. And this is a very universal theme, that parents raise their children, but then the children go on to have their own lives and their own children, and don't always have time for their parents and their old hometowns, etc. So there's a lot of there's some serious points. There's a lot of funny things going on in the film. So the oldest son has these two little boys. One is about 12 or 13 years old. The other one's about 8 or 10 years old. And again, going to the idea of universal themes. Well, the grandparents travel from far away. You'd think that the grandkids are going to show a little bit more interest in the grandparents, but basically they don't. They kind of just say, hi grandparents, and then go off. They storm off because they find out that this outing that they had been looking forward to is not happening. So very typical kids, especially the younger son, is very funny. But then there are also some very touching scenes. So for example, again involving the younger son, there's a scene where the grandmother is asking the kids, what are you gonna be when you grow up? And they don't really answer. They do, they don't. And so the grandma starts speculating, and she becomes very pensive, and what she's saying out loud is, I don't even know if I'm gonna ever see you grow up and what you'll become. And the look on this character's face is so heartbreaking. It's so expressive. So talking about the characters and the actors who play them, Ozu used several actors quite a lot in his film. So for example, the grandfather is played by this actor named Shishu Ryu, I'm probably mispronouncing that, and he appeared in 52 of Ozu's 54 films, and so he's rightly considered to have been Ozu's favorite actor. And the character of Noriko, the daughter-in-law, she's played by Setsuko Hara, and she is an interesting actress. She was basically kind of like the Teresa Wright, Marlene Dietrich of her time. I'm not going to go into too much of that. You can Google her. But the reason she's kind of considered the Marlene Dietrich of her time is that she stopped making films in 1963, the year that Ozu died. Some people speculate that they had been involved, and so she lost interest in making films because of his death. Other people base their opinion on the fact that she said in a later interview, when she lived to be almost 100 years old, she basically said that she was never much interested in filmmaking. She didn't like filmmaking, and that she basically only did it because she was from a large family. She had to support herself and that large family. So go figure. She was a genius actress, but never cared much for her acting. Maybe there's a lesson in there, maybe not. Who knows? So I've talked a lot about some of Ozu's style. I've talked about a little, not as much maybe about the story, but I hope that this will interest you. This and other films that I am sharing with you. And in the meantime, take care and see you again soon.